Hello, everyone, and welcome back for some more Let's Read Witch on the Holy Night. I don't know if this is the finale. I legitimately have no idea how much more there is. There's usually rather lengthy epilogues to these tales, but we'll have to see. We're on A Tale of the Star. We had the big fight. We had a lot, and there has been some speculation about the nature of Soujyuro, the scar. We'll talk about all that because apparently they do go into it a little bit more. I have some ideas, which of course I kind of put out there. Other people have their own ideas, which I did read a bit of, and very interesting stuff. So for now, though, let's continue. Six days passed. The weather in that time, sunny and clear. Beautiful. It's what it's like right now. Love it. Oh, look at that parallax. That's so good. And the slow piano remix. Aww. This game's soundtrack is incredible. It first came to Soujyuro's attention when he was resting with Alice after spending all day cleaning.
Soujyuro, 今日ぐらいはバイト休みでしょ?
Are they gonna take him to the aquarium? Ako asked him in her usual manner immediately upon entering the drawing room. It was already nighttime, approaching 9 o'clock. The afternoon's sunny weather had changed abruptly and thick clouds were visible out the window. Awoken from his nonchalant daydreaming, Soujyuro tilted his head to the side and replied calmly,
休みだけど、どうして?
これから実家に戻るから用意しておいて。
Oh. Soujyuro's peaceful expression had grown tense the moment she appeared. Unsure of what any of this had to do with him, he stole a glance at Alice, who was seated across from him. However, she looked surprised as well, her eyes widening ever so slightly as she studied the other two.
用意って何の?
He replied timidly, struggling to hide his bitterness at Aoko for waiting until the cleaning was finished before deciding to show up.
用意は用意よ。1時間ぐらい歩く山の上だから、寒くない格好をしろって言ってるの。
Huh. Soujyuro's expression only grew darker. The way she spoke made it sound like...
しずきくんを連れて行くの。
Yeah. Alice spoke up before Soujyuro himself could manage to say anything. Aoko brusquely asked if there was a problem.
私だってあんなとこに行きたくないわよ。けど、今日ぐらいは顔を出せってうるさいから、本当に顔だけ見せに行くの。Soujyuroを連れて行くのは単に暇だからだけど。
Okay. I was really worried that it's alright. Time to go, we'll bring you to our house, we'll erase your memories, and that's it. That's what we're doing. If that was the case, just out of nowhere, I would feel terrible. She stood tall as if challenging her roommate to oppose her decision. Alice's face was dour as she gazed back. Soujyuro's irritation was obvious as well as he glared at Aoko. Of course, their unspoken objection had no effect on Aoko in the slightest.
それじゃあ、班になったら出かけるからね。
Having said all she wanted, Aoko disappeared from the room once again. Alice and Soujyuro could only sit in dumbfounded silence.
アリス、青崎の家って遠いのか?
He stared at the clock as he spoke. There are only 10 minutes to go until half past the hour.
場所的には三崎市の端よ。
Oh,
ここから電車で4駅分下った小さな山の中にあるわ。
that's absolutely not that bad.
あなたの住んでいたところに比べれば丘でしょうけど。
Her expression had not changed, but her voice made it obvious she was in a poor mood. His complete obliviousness to this fact only showed how clueless he truly was.
そっか。今から行ったら帰ってくるのは明日になるね。
帰ってこられたらの話だけど。
Oh, geez. Each spoke to themselves as if there were no one else in the room. I would have said was, but that's just me. Those about to embark on a journey always feel a sense of dread, and, well, he was no exception.
青崎の家ってお化けでも出るのか?
Alice, did not say anything in response. All she did was raise her eyes from her teacup to stare wordlessly at him.
アリス
Her question caused her to suddenly avert her eyes. Something seemed off about her today. The minute hand on the clock was about to reach 30. Bothered as he was by Alice's odd behavior, Soujyuro had no choice but to stand up from the sofa and take his leave.
それじゃあ行ってくるよ
Is she sad that... I feel like she's a bit sad that she's gonna not have some nice time with Soujyuro. And that Aoko's taking her, or him, you know? That's kind of what it feels like. Soujyuro hurried through the drawing room. Alice kept staring at his back until he was gone. Right? Oh, it's like a puppy being, taken for a little trip. By the time he had changed his room and returned to the foyer, Aoko was already waiting and ready to go. Furthermore, Alice was at her side and they were deep in conversation. She abruptly ended their chat as soon as he descended the stairs.
それじゃあ行きましょうか。アリス、留守番よろしくね。
She responded with a simple nod. There was determination in Aoko's step as she strode to the door. Soujyuro made to follow her as he donned his coat in the foyer.
ほら、ぐずぐずしない。
Her words made him pick up his pace, but he stopped suddenly, as if he had remembered something. He looked back at Alice as if to say that he had left the heater on in his room or some other important matter.
それじゃあ行ってくるできるだけ早めに帰ってくるから寝ないで待ってるんだぞアリス
Aww. Alice blinked in shock at his unexpected request. Aoko looked on with arms folded as Soujyuro stood waiting for a response. Bewildered, Alice finally returned to the drawing room without uttering a single word. Her only response had been the very smallest of nods. They're so frickin' cute. Oh my god. They were headed for Akikoshiro train station. The night had grown late. It was nearly 11 o'clock. Look at this art. Look at this, full-on custom CG art. You can tell because the shading gets... There's a roundness. There's a realism and depth to the art. Oh, it's going to keep going. That really reminds me almost of the Shinkiro art from, the Capcom and SNK days there. It's not the full-blown realism, definitely. But there's, in the way especially clothing and lighting hit stuff, it is tremendously realistic, and I really like that. A train full of tourists went by in the opposite direction before the two finally arrived at the tiny station. The surrounding area was incredibly dark and quiet. In fact, it felt less like a station and more like a small boat dock. Soujyuro had a hard time imagining that many people came here during the day. It had only the absolute bare minimum necessary to greet the odd visitor. There were no convenience stores in sight, only fields and the street lights that dawned the road. Aoko placed her ticket in front of the attendant who sat sleeping in his chair and skimmed the train schedule. The last and only train back departed just after midnight. Having confirmed her option, she headed hastily out of the station. The elderly station attendant was all alone. He dozed off with both the heater and television still turned on. As he slept, his face looked completely content. The night felt vast in its darkness. The small train station had been rendered obsolete now that cars were commonplace. There's a reason Soujyuro was there. He was looking at that. He was looking at the smaller civilization, right? It was like a lone star shining in the night sky. Soujyuro thanked the attendant for his service before stepping out of the darkness. The man must have looked after the station for decades at this point, and would likely continue until the day he died. Happiness in your station, huh? Wow. The sound of footprints. The pure... Oh. Outside the station, there was little in the way of human development. It could scarcely be called a village. There was not even an area out front for cars and buses to drop people off. Their eyes were met with only a panorama of flat fields interlaced with a lattice of footpaths. Though surely a sea of beautiful green in the summertime, in winter it was more like a wasteland. However, electric lights that felt strangely out of place illuminated one side of the dark vista. The cold only grew harsher as the night wore on. It relentlessly snatched all sensation from the fingertips. Aoko thus kept her hands in her pockets as she strode through the paths among the fields. She could feel the ground below her shoes, through her shoes. Its softness was unlike that of the city, and for her it brought back countless memories. She had walked this path every day in middle school, after all.
あの山の真ん中あたり、家の明かりが見えるでしょ。あれがうち。
Oh, yeah, I see them over there. She pointed out a mountain that rose up before them with her finger. The journey looked like it would take about 40 minutes on foot. For now, they remained among the rice fields, though their journey would continue beyond them. Aoko followed the path bathed in light without looking back. The path seemed to hang before them, like a pier leading out into the darkness of the ocean. The closer they got to the mountain, the darker it became. All signs of the hustle and bustle of human life were absent. The dark stillness made the moon overhead seem dazzling. Its light transformed the mountain path from blackness into mere shadow. Though dark, their surroundings were not totally indiscernible. The seemingly unending path stretched on and on. Soujyuro, doing his best to match Aoko's pace, stole a momentary glance at the profile of her face. Did she not feel frightened in this quiet darkness, even with the moon to light their way? Her expression showed no outward signs of discomfort as she strode on in silence. In fact, this was how she always looked when she was trying to act tough. He had only a month's experience with her. Really? This whole thing felt like it lasted a lot longer. Wow. But that much he knew. There was obviously something on her mind she couldn't ignore, no matter how small it might be.
青崎でもこういうところは怖いのかい？
She responded to his tentative question with a surprising nod.
こんな夜道を怖がらない人なんて普通いないでしょ。我慢できるか無視できるかの2つだけよ。そのどちらもできない人は夜に出歩かないわ。
なるほど。それじゃあどうして自分を連れてきたんだ？
言わなかった？こんな何もない道を一人で歩くのは時間の無駄でしょ。退屈しのぎに話し相手が欲しかったの。
Honestly, fair. Absolutely fair. There's nothing worse than being alone somewhere just with your thoughts. Having someone with you provides a lot of comfort.
そういえばそんなことを言ってたな。
Soujyuro fell into silence. He was not bothered by what she said. Rather, he was desperately searching for something to say in response. Their path through the night continued onward. Only the sound of their footsteps could be heard. Eventually, Aoko was unable to endure the silence any longer despite her best efforts.
小十郎、退屈しのぎに何か話してよ。
I hate when people say this. What do you want me to talk about?
参ったな。
Yeah.
話すようなことはないんだけど。
He felt clueless and ashamed. He'd been searching unsuccessfully for a topic through their awkward silence. Shocked though she was, Aoko let out a gentle sigh. At least for a moment, his simple earnestness was enough to make her forget all about her troubles.
バカね。嘘でも何でもいいから、とにかく話をすればいいの。別に面白い話なんて期待してないから。
Her blunt retort was not entirely honest. She would surely scold him if he dared lie to her. Soujyuro said as much, reminding her of how she claimed to hate lies. Naturally, she did not bother to respond to him.
仕方ない。話はないけど聞きたいことならあった。何でもいいならそれもいいだろ。
A slight scowl crossed her face at his suggestion, but it lasted only a moment before she returned to her previous calm state.
ま、それもいいか。どうせもうすぐ忘れるんだから。
She muttered her reply without making eye contact. Their destination in the mountains remained hidden from them, revealing not even a hint of its form. It had bothered him ever since that night. What was the truth behind it all, and how would the two sisters' drama unfold? Soujyuro ventured to press Aoko for details.
それで瞳子さんは何がしたかったんだ？
あれ、言わなかった？ 私への復讐と根源に接触することだって。根源の渦については前に少しだけ話したでしょ。
確か魔術の源だっけ。
A lot more than that, but yeah.
そう。そして最終目的でもあるわ。根源の渦っていうのは全ての英知が記録された位置、全ての事柄が決定された場所、そこを見て触れて理解できれば不可能なんて言葉すら作り変えられる。伝承によって呼び名は様々だけど、要するに神様のいる位置なんでしょうね。
Now, are we talking about not the Catholic God, right? More like the overall nebulous concept of a god, I'm assuming, at least? Huh.
神様っていうのは八百万的なものじゃなく。
Oh god. We gotta explain monotheism to this lad.
たまにそういうこと言い出すから厄介よね。そりゃ万象に宿る神様もいるでしょうけど、これはその前。そういうのを決めた大前提みたいなものよ。
Okay, so yeah, specifically the sort of idea of, yeah, there's a lot of gods, but there is one, like, sort of above them all.
そんなものの入り口がどうして岬にあったのかは知らないけど、祖父はそれを発見して新しい魔法を作り出した。でもその後に根源への道を閉ざしちゃったのよ。魔法さえ成立したのなら神様への道は消えるべきだって。多分私たちが生きてる限り解放する気はなくて、トウコはそれが腹立たしかったんだと思う。たとえ力不足で取り込まれても道があるのなら試すべきだ。自己の消滅を恐れるぐらいならそもそも魔術なんて学ばなかった。
Those are the words of a mage.
でも祖父は礎になろうとする一切認めなかった。もっと強力な跡継ぎが生まれるまで根源の解析は許可しない。跡継ぎに魔法は譲るけれど、根
Okay.
源への道だけは閉ざしていたのよ。
Ironic, because that's kind of what she did.
トウコの気持ちもわかるけど、私は祖父に賛成だわ。根源なんてものに興味はないし、第一今まで一人も生還者がいないんだもの。それが本当に神々の座なのか保証もないし。
Her mood had gradually soured as she spoke, and towards the end of it, it sounded more like a list of complaints. Despite her words, however, part of Aoko was unable to agree completely with her grandfather's decision. Soujyuro took note and followed up with a question about something he found strange.
青崎、一人も生還者がいないってどういうことだ？
根源に触れて帰ってきた者は一人もいないの。世界規模でね。触れれば即消滅。人間程度の魂だと触れた瞬間に元に戻るとか、根源に取り込まれるとか。
Like a black hole, but with less spaghettification.
なんでどんなに歴史に名を残した魔術師でもあれにだけは触れていないわ。せいぜい間近にして大急ぎで自分の魔術を安定させた程度だもの。
Soujyuro furrowed his brow at the oddness of it all.
それじゃあどうしてそこがそういう場所だってわかるんだ？
そりゃ中に入って伝えた人がいたからでしょ。
でも生還者はいないって。
だからそういう人たちは中で神様にでもなっちゃったんじゃない？
She spoke very matter-of-factly, as if it was only a minor detail about something that happened the other day.
そうなればこっちに帰ってくる必要はないでしょうし、もしかすると単に帰ってこられないだけかもね。ま、神様って位置づけが私たちが思っているようなものとは思えないから、あまり幸福そうには思えないけど。
Whether they succeed or fail in their endeavor, those who reach the root become unable to return to the normal world. Maybe the first person to become God felt lonely and spread the word about the swirl of the root in order to have others join them there. Maybe they had so much work to do as God, they just needed some help. None of it made any sense, no matter how long Soujyuro thought about it.
トウコさんはそうなりたかったのかな？
まさかあの人は単に知りたかっただけよ。その後に残された人たちのことなんて興味はないの。昔から目標に没頭しても成果を愛する人じゃなかったから。正直なところそのあたり姉貴は突き抜けてるわ。本当の天才ってのはああいう非人間のこと言うのよ。 苦労して作り上げたものの、その後を全く考えないんだから。
Soujyuro wasn't sure whether she spoke out of disgust or respect.
でも、そのくせ面倒見はいいっていうか、未来のことは考えないのに、今あるものには何にでも興味を持つんだから。
Aoko praised her sister's genius, even while cursing her. Every being? You mean the very being. Though her tone of voice was perfectly pleasant and lacked any audible animosity.
そうだね。それに、トウコさんはこっちの方が好きみたいだったから。
She does just, have a thing for people like you. Soon as he spoke, he was struck by the meaning of Aoko's earlier words. I don't care about the root. He realized that she must feel the same way as Toko. And so, there was one thing that had been bothering Soujyuro regarding Toko.
そういえば、カエルにするって一体。
He ventured to bring up the topic no one had been talking about since it occurred. It had always seemed taboo to bring up, so the sense of transgression made him hesitate as he finally sought the truth.
一体も何も言葉通りの意味だけど、もともとルーン使いには変身術がある分、トウコにはかかりやすかったみたいよ。
Interesting.
いや、そんな当然のように言われても。
His stomach hurt from the stress of not knowing how to respond to her cavalier attitude.
まあ、それでどうやって。
Bro, it's magic. Magecraft. He did not particularly want to ask, but it was a natural extension of his current line of inquiry. Aoko stared straight ahead as she lectured him, completely ignoring the pained expression on his face.
2種類あって、精神を入れ替えるのか、肉体を再編成するかね。精神だけを入れ替えるのは簡単な分、すぐ元に戻れるわ。
So it's, Captain Ginyu.
夢を見ているようなものだし、ちょっとしたショックで元の体に意識が戻ってくれるから。
Mm-hmm.
厄介なのは肉体そのものを変えてしまう方で、この場合、術が切れるまで元に戻るのは難しい。私がやったのは、その再編成の方みたい。多分塩基配列を組み替えるんだろうけど、もうちんぷんかんぷん。魔術の科学的な説明するのもナンセンスだし。
I like the fact that, yeah, it's like, magic still uses science. But it's tough to explain. Aoko spoke as if it were not her own actions she were discussing. Apparently, she had only been borrowing magecraft from her future self and could not use any of it in her present. Her actions had also created a looming threat that would come back to haunt them in 10 years' time. Trying to comprehend even a fraction of all the intricacies involved made Sojuro's head hurt.
あと数年後には青崎はそんなこともできるのか。末恐ろしいな。
Soujyuro was being completely honest with her. In response, Aoko only stared ahead blankly, eyes wide open. She looked like she wanted to scold him.
ね、アリスならそれぐらい今でもできるわよ。
She could turn you into a frog right now, bro.
だと。
やっぱりね、そんなことだと思ってたわ。
He didn't know.
前にも言ったでしょ。アリスの部屋のもろもろの人形は、あの子に逆らった執事たちの慣れの果てなんだから。
What?
まさか、アリスはそんなことしないぞ。
いやいや、これが。私もね、付き合い始めた半年はそう思ってたんだけどね。
That little slide was the, oh, you don't know? I need a gift for that. The light, cheerful laughter that followed only made her statement all the more chilling.
青崎、その冗談笑えないぞ。
あら、私は笑わせる気なんてこれっぽっちもないんだけど。
She was clearly making fun of him at this point. Unable to determine how serious to take what she had said, Sojuro's mood and expression only grew darker. His obvious dejection made Aoko smile with satisfaction.
あそこであんたの言葉にうなずいちゃうあの子が、そこまで魔女になれるはずもないんだけど。
She gazed at him as they walked, her chest warm with emotion. The path they strode had shifted from footpaths through rice fields to a road climbing the mountain. It was surprisingly wide given the mountain's small size, though with no shortage of trees on either side. The forest road led them to the top of the mountain. Wheel marks were etched into the dirt underfoot. No doubt Aozaki's family came through here by car. The only light at the summit was that of the moon and stars overhead. The bald mountaintop lacked streetlights and houses, as well as vegetation. Near the top, the incline of their path began to even out. The road ended abruptly at a house, still a good way before them. It was too far to make out the shape of the building, but Soujyuro assumed it was Aozaki's house based on the warm light coming from the
と
windows.
ころで君が家で団らんしている間自分は何をしていればいいんだろ
He had a hard time imagining her engaging in any sort of family bonding time, but with effort he could imagine that it must be a joyful time for her. He did not want to ruin that by intruding, which is why he brought up the subject now. If he had to, he would not mind spending the night camping outside. Her reply was not what he had expected.
君はうちの離れに行って祖父に会うの。
Oh.
多分そこで今日までの記憶を消されるわ。
Oh, no, it is the thing that I was worried about. She stopped dead in her tracks as she spoke. The frank and open attitude she had shown all night was gone.
Eh?
Soujyuro was too shocked to take another step forward. No. He turned back to look at her, having been walking a little ways ahead, and realized she was not joking. He stood still, taking in the glaring silence. Naturally, Ak was the first to resume speaking.
驚かないのね、あなた。
う。いや驚いたけどでもそれは初めから決まっていたことだ。
This is literally taking a
So
final
did
walk
Aozaki
with your
already
dog
take it
before
over.
putting him down, basically. Frick.
退屈しのぎは本当よ。それとは別に祖父があなたを連れてこいって言ったの。
Soujyuro nodded in acceptance. He was as quiet and unchanging as the night around him, something which Aoko found thoroughly irritating.
それじゃあ行こうか。立っていると寒い。
宗十郎、
Ako's voice stopped him in his tracks, just as he was about to resume walking toward her house.
あなたはそれでいいの。
Yeah. Take a stance on this, buddy.
記憶を消されるってことは今までの1ヶ月がなくなるのと同じなのよ。
Soujyuro murmured in understanding. Thought of returning to his old self and forgetting about Aoko, Alice, and the mansion altogether felt like giving up a treasure that he had discovered. But he didn't feel like he was unable to let them go, either.
確かにそれは嫌だな。青崎と知り合ってからの1ヶ月は楽しかったしアリスとも約束したばっかりだしでも青崎が消えるわけじゃないんだろう。冬休みが終わればまた学校で会えるじゃないか。
There was no answer from Aoko, yeah. She did not want to tell him that he was not the only one who would be losing their memory. Intervention by her grandfather would erase her own memories of Soujyuro too. Once it was done, they would most likely never speak with one another again. Each would just become another random student at school. Even if they did happen to meet by some lucky circumstance, things would not be the same as they were now. She could not deny that a small part of her was going to miss him.
そうなら行きましょう。
No. She rationalized her feelings away instead of processing them and set off once more toward the house. Soujyuro followed along at her side. It was a matter of several minutes before they reached their destination. She was irritated to see that the expression on his face looked exactly the same as it always did. Forgetting their time together was sad for her, if only slightly so, but it did not seem to bother him in the least.
そりゃね、平気で自分の腕を叩き折れるやつにそんな繊細なこと期待していないけど。
Halfway through muttering her complaint, Ako suddenly remembered. Or rather, she realized something. Something about the one-time werewolf killer before her, and the mystery of who Soujyuro Shizuki really was. The older version of herself that night had memories and knowledge of Soujyuro beyond what she knew now. Something about this seemingly average boy's mistakes. Why was he able to do that? And why was he raised in the mountains in the first place? She had always wondered, but never had a chance to ask him about it until now. Once her grandfather was through with them, all those questions she had about Soujyuro would be gone too. There was no point in asking No, there is! Yeah, there's no point in asking right before they had their memories erased, but then again, she might as well if she was going to forget everything anyway. This was her only chance to demand an explanation for his contradictory behavior.
待って。私も最後に一つ聞きたいことがある。
Please give me this info.
あんた、山でどんな生活を送ってたの？
Her question stopped him on the spot. She'd never seen him make such a pained expression.
つまらないよ、そんな話は。
面白い話は期待してないって言ったでしょ。どうせ私も宗十郎のことは忘れるんだから、それぐらい話してくれてもいいんじゃない？
Her words and demanding gaze caused him to lift his head in surprise. He didn't know about that part.
忘れるって、
Yeah.
青崎が？
当然よ。あんたが忘れても私が覚えているんじゃ意味がないでしょ。言ってこいで公平じゃない。なんでそんな顔するの？
Sojuro's hand shot up to cover his mouth in response. He doesn't want her to lose the character development. He doesn't care about himself, but he doesn't want her to go back. He had no idea what kind of look he had been giving her, but he had a feeling it was pretty pathetic. He's so selfless.
青崎も忘れるのか。
He doesn't care about himself, but he doesn't want her to lose them either.
そこまでは考えていなかった。
Yeah.
ええ。そして私はあなたとは会わなくなる。断定はできないけど、まず間違いなくね。
Like he's fine with losing, but he doesn't want her to lose. Thus, this would be their last conversation. The way she spoke made it obvious, even if he had not been aware of what awaited him inside. Soujyuro might see her walk by at school and feel a desire to talk, but they would have no reason to interact. Even if he tried to strike up a conversation, he knew she was not the type to bother with other people. More importantly, he was not the type to strike up conversations in the first place. Not the way he had been a month ago, at least. That was when he finally realized how cruel it can be to forget something. Not only would he forget what they had done together, he would not so much as know her name or even be aware that she existed. Even if he felt strangely drawn to her, he would never understand why. And despite the fact that if some lucky twist of fate brought them together, things would never be the same. Their walk that night was no less than a funeral for the both of them. He would essentially kill the person he knew as Aoko Ozaki, and she would kill the person she knew as Soujyuro Shizuki. Afterward, nothing would remain.
だからその前に聞いておきたいの。嫌だって言うなら、あとはこのまま家まで直行するだけだけど。
それは寂しいな。うん。くだらない話だけど、会話がないよりはマシだろ。
Muttering under his breath, Soujyuro set off towards the house once again. This time it was Aoko who matched his pace. There were only minutes left before their path came to its end. The cold air turned their breath into white puffs that hung frozen in the dark night. Was it time? Looking back on their conversation later, Aoko would think it seemed more of a confession than anything else. For Soujyuro, however, it was like one long, poorly told fairy tale. Please, don't skip
山で
over
の
it.
暮らしは別にどうということはない。毎日同じことを繰り返して、毎日同じことを教えられた。
Oh boy.
そこでは明日はないんだ。始まりが朝で、夜になれば終わる。一日は次の日にはつながらない。だから明日を夢見ることもない。次の日を楽しみにするなんて言葉はこっちに来てから知った感覚だったな。初めは馴染めなかったし、馴染む気もなかった。けどみんながまた明日と満足そうに口にする。いつの間にかそういうものを夢見るようになっている自分がいた。
Soujyuro kept walking as he spoke. He stared straight ahead as if telling his story to the night itself, not once turning to face Aoko. For her part, Aoko was utterly silent. She knew it was pointless to so much as nod or ask a
目が
question.
覚めていつもの一日に戻って、ふと気がつくと昨日までいた誰かがいない。訪ねてみると夜に体調を崩したらしい。たまにね、眠れなくなって家から出て行って それっきりな人もいたんだ。見なくなってしばらくした後、崖の下で見覚えのある遺体を見つけたこともあった。今にして思うと、それは異常なことだ。集まって暮らしていればそんなことにはならなかったのに、自分たちは関わらなかった。一日で完結する世界だったから、他人は必要じゃなかったのかもしれない。山では食べるものも少なかった。飢えないためには他の人が寄りつけない場所に行くことが多くなる。その途中の道でいなくなってしまう人も多かった。山では誰も他人から奪うことを考えなかった。口にできるものを探すとき、気を配る相手は犬だの熊だのだけで、人を気にすることはなかったんだよ。今はその逆になりつつあるけど、ともかく生活の半分はそれだけで済んでいた。
Soujyuro continued to stare straight ahead. He did not seem troubled by his memories. To Aoko's ears, it sounded like he was describing a place no one in their right mind would want to live, as if it were perfectly normal, almost as if he missed it. But from that point onward, he slowly began to show more signs of distress as he spoke.
もう半分は、まあ、身を守る手段を教わっていた。
Sure, let's go with the word defend.
学校の授業に比べたら些細なことだ。単に自分の体はどう動くものなのか、生き物はどう動くものなのかをよく見てよく考えろと言われた。単純な反復運動だ。小石を蹴ったり森の中にこもったり、まあそんな意味合いのことをやっていたんだ。あの決まり事が始まると朝も夜もなかった。外の変化に気持ちを向ける余裕はなくて、ふと気がつくと随分長く食事をしていないなんてのもザラだった。あ、ちゃんとご飯はもらえたよ。そういうのの後は。あれが何のためだったのかは今でもわからない。ただ山で暮らしていくには役に立ったし、そもそもあれだって生活の一部だった。
So he didn't understand why he was there. So the interesting thing is it is very open, where if you are just reading this as, oh, he lived up with a bunch of people in the mountains, it'd be whatever. But knowing the context of, Soichiro Kizuki, this greatly changes everything that we're reading, right? Yeah.
生きるってことはそうすることだって思ってた。こうやって息をして歩くためにはあの繰り返しは当然のものだったんだ。
And like it really feels like he was actually born into this world, right? Like from birth he knew this world.
宗十郎、それは。
His tone was totally indifferent, but the strangeness of it all forced Aoko to interject. He glanced at Aoko and nodded as if to show he knew what she was thinking.
何かがおかしかったんだろう。あれは身を守る知恵じゃなくて、
Yep.
もっと違う用途のものだった。たまにいなくなる知り合いは山の土になったんじゃなくて、他の場所で他の理由で消えた場合もあったんだろう。でも考えることさえなかった。精神の隙間を知れだの、命の勝ち負けを知れだの、意味を汲み取らないまま鵜呑みにして、それがどう評価されるものなのか俺にはわからない。ただ知らなければ、外のことなんて知らなければ、悩むことなく自分はそこに居続けられたと思う。
あなたの嫌いな生き死にの真似を続けて。
He did not respond to her question. From then on, they continued walking in silence. Aoko could not stop thinking about all the contradictions and absurdities in what he had said. The imbalance in his education, for one. His knowledge of the basics of human life was thorough, yet he knew next to nothing about modern technology. He always said he was not good at socializing, but he seemed accustomed to talking and discussion. His upbringing could not have happened that way by chance. It was most certainly an environment purposely constructed according to some play by some third party. Aoko had no idea what that plan could be, or who the third party was, though. Why would anyone want to create someone with a background like Soujyuro's? Was it all part of a grander plan? Or was there really a place, deep in the mountains, where it was normal to live like that? He'd asked about this once in his home in the mountains, apparently. When he expressed his confusion, an elder had taken him aside, saying, "This is just how things have always been around here, boy. There's no reason to keep doing it, but there's also no reason to stop." With a laugh, the elder chose a new identity in life outside the mountains for young Soujyuro and sent him off to live on his own. Okay, that answered a question that I had. I had the question of, was it he ran from there? Was he sent out? Was he exiled? But no. It seems like the elder recognized he might not be a good fit. And so he sent him to the city. For what purpose? That's the question. And then I guess also answers the question of, where did he get the scars on his neck from? Well, the evidence of the first thing he tried to do when he came back to life was, once again, end his life. Kind of makes it feel like, and his shame for that scar. He has no shame of the rest of the scars on his body, but he has shame on the scars on his neck, so you can kind of probably piece together where that comes from. Now, the question, of course, is when. I initially thought that maybe that was, because when that was brought up, and that idea of, perhaps he trained his body so hard that he couldn't even, let's say, hang himself. I wondered if that would have happened in the mountains. And then that would have led to his exile. There's still a chance, but this makes it sound a bit more like it might have happened when he first moved to the city. Which is also, like, he got to the city and that was one of his first things to think about, which is absolutely terrifying, right? But yeah, if that would permanently, stain the body, and I would see why that would be something that he would cover up. Anyways, Aoko's home loomed at the end of their path. It was a generic home without any real distinguishing features. It seemed as if a house from town had been picked up and dropped here. One could imagine the residents were peaceful people who engaged in farming and raising animals in their spare time. Gazing at what lay before him, Soujyuro finally opened his mouth to answer Aoko's earlier question.
自分にはできなかった。知らなければよかったのに知ってしまったから。その後は簡単だ。泣けない鳥はいらないと言われた。今まで疑いもなくできたことを意味を知っただけでできなくなったものはいらないと。
Yeah. Because now that as soon as he learned of the outside world, that's it. He can't return.
どんなに山にいたくてもできないのなら意味がない。俺は意味を知った瞬間に意味を信じることができなくなった。だから山を降りたんだ。けれど、どうなんだ。そこではそうすることだけが全てだった。そうすることだけしか教えられなかった。だから。
There had only been one problem with his life in the mountains. Him, for having questioned it. It was all his mistake. He muttered as much to himself, his voice dripping with criticism. In Aoko's opinion, the world he described was, in a sense, perfect. The best situation to achieve a goal is one in which all elements extraneous to the goal had been removed. As long as the people involved have no concept of morality, they consider the immoral to be completely correct. No, even such correctness would be foreign in concept. Only one thing was for sure. The world he had come from was frozen in time. That was what made Sojuro's tragedy possible. A world of wrongdoing and mistakes had created a human riddled with mistakes as well. Soujyuro understood that it was wrong, and yet he still thought it was beautiful even now. Regardless of what the truth behind it might have been, he considered that world perfect. He only blamed himself for having learned what existed outside that world. He himself had said he could still be living there happily.
知らなければよかったのに。
He surely felt the weight of the sinful words he spoke more deeply than anyone else. That's why he still wondered. What had gone awry? Whose fault was it, really? He did not want to answer those questions alone. He wanted her to state it clearly for him. There was a moment of silence that felt like an eternity before she spoke.
私には答えられないわ。
Her reply came quietly. It was not that she did not have an answer, it was that she could not tell him. It was a struggle for her to tell such a bold-faced lie. He reflected deeply on what she said. He knew right away that her words were coming from a place of kindness.
そうだな。君の最初の優しさが今でよかった。
A pleasant look floated across his face, at which Aoko could only scowl.
何よそれ。まるで普段から優しくないみたいじゃない。
青崎は優しくないじゃないか。
Dang. She found herself unable to offer any protests against such a blunt statement. It was because she knew he was correct.
そうね。優しくなんかないわね。私。
Soujyuro smiled in response to her vaguely sad consent as if to say, told you so. His indulgent smirk arose from his sense of personal pride in the situation. It was both heartwarming and uncomfortable, causing Aoko to instantly regret her question. If only she had asked about something else, something random that did not matter, then she never would have ended up in a mood like this. Only a few minutes remained until their path came to an end. Surrounded by a wooden fence, the house resembled an inn for passing travelers in winter. The light spilling out from the windows brought to mind images of a lively dinner table, quite the opposite of the current mood between the
ごめ
two.
ん。悪いこと聞いちゃって。
Aoko stopped at the entrance to the yard. She had felt compelled to apologize, even though it was the last time they would speak. Or perhaps because it was the last time. Sojuro's only response was to shrug it off as if it were no problem.
話途中なのにね。
He looked up at the house they had hiked so far to reach, his breath hanging white in the air. All signs of gloom were gone from Sojuro's face as he nodded.
自分も話してみてようやく振り向けたと思う。だから青崎には感謝してるよ。それにこれはもう終わったことだ。続きを話すのはまた機会があった時にしよう。
He turned his head to face Aoko with an ephemeral smile. He was his usual, nonchalant self, the same as every other day. Aoko prayed that day would never come. For her own peace of mind, but also for the well-being of this very unique boy.
もっとも、そんな機会はもう来ないか。
Then she pointed in the direction of a cave hidden by a small forest on the other side of the house.
あそこ、ちょっとした洞穴があるの。そこに祖父がいるから、行って。本当は、もっと違った話が聞きたかったけど、仕方ないか。魔法は12時になると切れちゃうものだしね。
A sarcastic grin spread across her face as she spoke, and so Soujyuro walked off, totally clueless as to what fairy tale she was referencing. I was gonna say, my man doesn't know about Cinderella. The forest felt so far from the house to Aoko that it was like a different place on Earth altogether. In reality, it wasn't far at all, only 5 minutes away. Now I just realized the reason that Alice was so saddened by the thing and her surprise is because she knew what this is about. That's so sad.
さよなら、しずきくん。
She said it to herself as she watched it. I'm crying. Oh, stop. She said it to herself as she watched him simply walk away without turning back. Though he wasn't meant to hear her words of parting, they apparently reached his ears anyway. Damn it. Why does he have to be the peak of human condition?
あ、じゃあまた明日町のどこかで。
He raised his hand in farewell, and then disappeared into the forest. As soon as she was sure he was gone, she turned her gaze to the sky. That night the stars were even more beautiful than the moon. He had been looking at her fondly only moments before, and now he was gone into the forest with only a brief word of parting. It did not feel real. And with that she finally understood, if a little too late to the matter. She understood who had truly been the strange and unusual one. Anyone could have ended up behaving like Soujyuro, but not many could keep talking on and on the way he did. Everything he had done now was perfectly sensible in light of his former life in the mountains. As a magician, she was supposed to make miracles happen, but he had arrived at a miracle of his own through the trials and tribulations of following what he considered to be common sense.
素手で熊を倒すなんて私にはどう転んでもできないし。
It was pretty impressive. Soujyuro's own magic was so mundane to him that it made him depressed to talk about it, but even so, it was the kind of brilliance only possessed by humans. She pulled her eyes back down from the starry sky and began to walk. The lights were on inside the entrance and the door was unlocked. Ako rolled up her sleeves and checked the time. 1 hour left till midnight. She just barely managed to satisfy her parents' request to visit by the end of the year. Placing her hand on the door, she took a deep breath. She promptly stifled the faint affection and sadness she had been feeling. It was her first time back in 2 years. Upon entering high school, she began living on her own, hence the past 2 years away from home. And how they flew by. For some reason, the memories began to race through her mind. There she stood, one hand on the door, reflecting on the past. Once the door was open, she would be staring at her future instead. Her hand holding the doorknob began to move. She was met with the warm scene she expected, though strangely different than that of her memories. It was comforting to encounter something familiar after being away for so long. And so it was with small, unspoken gratitude that Aoko returned to her home. Without stopping to ring the doorbell, she called out with a smile, "I'm home." I swear if credits roll. I swear to God if credits roll. Good. If credits started rolling, I would actually have frickin' screamed. Oh, this was his cave this whole time. Interesting. Of course. Yeah. The moment Soujyuro stepped inside, he was struck with a strange feeling of familiarity. It was not mere nostalgia either. No, it reached further back into the past. It was a feeling from far beyond what he could even imagine. Wait, what? He was reminded of someone, but he could not remember whom. Is it because they shared memories in the time travel? Or, hold on, was the beginning of the game with Soujyuro? Perhaps he was only reminded of himself, or perhaps of the old man before him now in the cave. It appeared to be an old man anyway. Soujyuro could not make any details out beyond a vague outline. As far as he could tell, the figure did not seem to have anything in the way of a face capable of making expressions. All he knew was that the smoke-like figure before him was the one Aoko called grandfather. Though hoarse, the old man's voice was powerful and it rung throughout the cavern.
望みがあるのなら聞こ
う。望みはないです。でも聞きたいことは一つあります。どうして二人を争わせたんですか？
それは私の外で起きた物語だ。答えることはできない。
そう仕向けたのはあなただと聞きました。
星の巡りだ。あれらは相入れない才能を与えられ、あのような形でしか噛み合えない人間だ。私の意図に関係なく、共にいればどちらかがきしみを上げた。だが、確かに衝突を避ける余地はあった。あれらの意志が凡庸であったか、あるいは破格のものであったのなら、多くの不順に耐えただろう。君のように自己の崩壊が見えていても共存を尊ぶように。しかし
彼女たちが争うのは彼女たちのせいだって言うんですね。その原因はあなたにあるのに。
This is a pretty ballsy move to call out the guy who can, potentially lobotomize you instantly.
そうだ。あれらの争いはあれらの生を表すもの。原因というのなら私などゼロに等しい。
ゼロ？形がないということですか？
形ではなく意味がない。私という起因から起こり、娘たちが一つの命を得た時点で、私は舞台から消え失せた。その後の因は常に娘たちから生じたものだ。私の介入はない。今回どちらが時間を終わらせても、あるいは両者が終わらせても、私には無価値だった。いや、元より無価値だ。私に価値を与える命はまだ生まれていない。あれらがどうなろうとやるべきことは変わらない。
青子が生きていても死んでいても跡継ぎを作るということですか？
おそらくこの体が消えないのはそういうことだ。
Imagine being such a boomer. I mean, it's not a boomer of this era, but imagine being such a boomer, regardless, that you refuse to move on until you see grandchildren. Great grandchildren. Whoops. That's the wrong button. The steamy energy that filled the cavern made Sojuro's head reel. The moment Aoko and Toko were born, their grandfather seemed to have completely forgotten that they were his granddaughters. It was hard to imagine a satisfactory Aozaki heir ever being born. No amount of power would satisfy the old man. He showed no signs of compromise or
青
restraint.
子はそのために過去を捨てたのに。
There was nothing but silence. However, this short moment of quiet would only occur once. The unreadable outline of the old man grew blurrier still. Long, long ago, an unfortunate child once wandered into the cave. There could be two people this could be. The old man automatically granted its request born from purity and ignorance. He was a magician who had given up his ego in order to extend his own lifespan, and he did whatever he could to help the child. It had been an incredible coincidence to happen that day. The child glared at the old man with tear-filled eyes at the sight of all the horrible things that had been brought about. Everything will be lost, completely and without warning, all because of a failure of a nobody like you. The child threw a tantrum at how unfair it all was. The magician claimed that that was merely the way of the world. The child stood up to him. "Shut up, old man." And then, yes, just at that moment, the child ran around in tears, trying to make the old man pay for the cost of a life, the cost of all the lives.
それは間違いだ、少年。
Perhaps that's how it
捨
happened.
てたのではない。それを美しくするためにあれは生きているのだ。
That role had likely come to an end long ago, however. The old man's appearance seemed to change before Sojuro's eyes. For just a brief moment, he wavered in the air as if in a haze.
君の過ちを正そう。娘たちは私というものをよく分かっている。ともすれば私本人より理解しているとも言える。私が娘たちの人格を考慮せぬように、娘たちもまた私というものの人格を認めていない。祖父さえいなかったのならという考えさえないだろう。あれらはそもそも争い合う自分たちを一度も卑下はしないはずだ。君にその関係を分かれというのは酷だろう。尋ね事は終わったようだ。次は私の番だ。君の名前を知りたい。
Sojuro answered the old man's question. The smoky face seemed to frown, quivering ever so
意
slightly.
外だ。君は孤立しているというのに複数を示す名がついているとは思わなかった。
Hold up. I don't know my Japanese numbers that well. Japanese number 10. 10 is... I type that in and it doesn't just tell me nice and blatantly. 10 is... Ju. Soujyuro. Yeah, Soujyuro. Or Soujyuro. What's 11? Wait. Okay, so numbers. So we have... Wait, Soujyuro. Soichiro. Hold up. Soujyuro is 10. Soichiro is 1. Oh my god. There's the connection. There's the connection. Whoa.
似合わん。全く似合わ
Huh.
ん。だがそちらでは正しいことだ。不釣り合いな場所にいるのなら、不釣り合いな名が必要だろう。希少ではあるが、やはり無価値だ。すべてを肯定する諦めは死に由来するものだろう。続くものがない以上、一代限りの才能は無価値だ。我の行く末に影響を与えた君に興味を持ったが、失望した。無駄な時間を過ごしたようだ。今は結ばれているが、いずれ離れていくのは変えようのない結末だ。では立ち去りたまえ。私は死者に用はない。二度と会うことはないだろう。
Everything grew blurry. Sojuro's memories began to fade. It had been a conversation without any answers. An encounter without any significance, now vanished completely like a dream. So how's he getting home? The air was cold, the sky beautiful. The evening sky at the end of each day looked different from the last. Each sunset could be seen for one day and one day only. Though the sky may now look dramatically different to the human eye from one day to the next, every day we wake up a new person, forget the beautiful sights, the moment of heartbreak, and all the other fleeting feelings that seemed so real the day before. Simple statements such as these felt all the more profound in the still air of the mountains, more bone-piercing than the winter cold itself. Soujyuro stared up at the night sky as if he'd forgotten when and where he was. Aoko's look of stunned surprise brought him back to the present.
なんだ、早かったな、青崎。
Okay, so they erased... I was gonna say, that sounds like you're simply erasing the memory of that encounter. Soujyuro turned to face Aoko, who had only just stepped outside her family's yard. At first, she had been too shocked to move or speak, but she quickly regained her composure and marched forward. She continued until she was standing right before him with an intense scowl on her face. Soujyuro slouched instinctively, bracing for impact. He had not the slightest idea what could have made her so angry.
なんでまだここにいるのよ。
After I finally managed to convince myself that things were over. She was obviously irritated with him in any case. That anger would have to subside before she could decide whether she was happy or sad to see him. Humans get angry when things do not go the way they had
さ
hoped.
っきから10分と20秒も経ってない。なんでこんなところで突っ立ってるのよ、あんた。
It was supposed to have taken an entire day for her grandfather to erase his memories from the past month. She had been planning to let her grandfather handle all the details, and yet here Soujyuro was staring dumbly at the sky. He's no astrologer. He just likes looking at the night sky. Bombarded with Aoko's unspoken emotion, he proceeded to explain himself.
あの老人からの伝言だけど、記憶の消去は君の役目で人に頼るな。だそうだ。今日呼ばれたのは単に悪口を聞かせたかっただけらしいよ。
God, you are related. Hearing this, Aoko finally began to feel like herself again. Despite having been ready to dish out the punishment only a few minutes earlier, he now felt quite calm.
そっか。人に任せるなんて確かに私らしくなかった。
The intense look in her eyes slowly faded to her usual, mildly irritated expression. It relieved Soujyuro to see her like this. She was finally back to her normal self.
納得いったなら行こう。急がないと最終電車に間に合わない。
With that, he walked off without waiting for an answer. Ako stared at his retreating figure for a brief moment before quietly cursing him under her breath and following after him. I know some people might think that's a cop-out that the memories aren't being erased, but screw you, I much prefer this ending. 100%. And that's kind of how all Nasuverse stuff ends, and that's okay. It really tries to set up these ideas of the thing is gone, the status quo has resumed, right? It always sets that up, and then it says, but if you work hard enough, you can keep this life. And it always does that, and every time it gets me. Their descent back to the station was much easier than the way there. A sheet of darkness spread out below them. There in the middle of that ocean of black was a single light, the tiny glowing station. They walked for some time in silence. Ako recalled their earlier conversation and felt she had been too naive. She should have avoided all the serious stuff if this was how things were going to end up. Soujyuro, meanwhile, was thinking of nothing at all, just like usual. For him, the silence felt quite natural, while for her it was awkwardly uncomfortable. Suddenly, Soujyuro blurted out the strangest thing without thinking. Please, you can't say the strangest thing without it being something completely out of left field. Let's go.
アリスにはお餅を買っていってあげよ
That's fairly absurd. I was expecting it to be something like, do you think strawberry milk comes from pink cows? Or something along those lines? Ako's eyes grew wide, her pupils reduced to mere points. That they are. Ako had many questions going on in her head, and she wanted to rail the paradox that was Soujyuro. Well, it is International Women's Day for me.
お餅が何？
う。お土産。アリス一人で待っているんだから喜ぶと思う。
Aww. Ako raised her hand to her head in concern. Unprotected by the warmth of a pair of gloves, her slender fingers went white from the cold.
あの子にはそういうの逆効果だけど、宗十郎がやる分には大丈夫か。
Mm-hmm. His seemingly selfless attitude came in handy sometimes. Alice would most likely accept his gift without making a scene.
そうね。確かにアリスはこういうの根に持って口に出さずに恨んでるたちだけど、またなんだってお土産がお餅なの？
だって食べたことなさそうだろ彼女。
All Ako could do in response to such a simple-minded observation was nod in agreement. The image of Alice eating mochi popped into her head, and suddenly the prospect of getting back to the mansion felt a little more exciting.
あんたって本当に無心よね。そういえば前から不思議に思ってたんだけど、いつからアリスと仲良くなったの？
Ako peered at him the way she would at a strange specimen, and as he took a deep breath and launched into an earnest explanation.
大きなきっかけとかそういうのはないと思うけど。
Yeah. It just sort of occurred.
強いて言うなら初めて話した時かな。もっと確かになったのはロビーで話した時だろうね。
Yeah.
たったそれだけ？
ああ、親しくなるっていうのはそういうことだろ。
It's true. Soujyuro seemed to find her question odd. The way he and Alice communicated went beyond words. Ako could only assume that was how he did it.
そういえば初めからアリスって呼び捨てだったものね、あんたは。
そうだっけ？よく覚えていないけど。それより何を怒ってるんだ青崎。
He even said Aozaki there.
別に怒ってないわよ、私。
Her response was slightly cold, but also somehow gentle. They approached the halfway point of the mountain path. The night sky appeared more distant as they neared the bottom, and Soujyuro continued to stare absent-mindedly at the stars. Then it finally hit her as to why his behavior had been bothering her since their ascent. She realized he must have been feeling nostalgia. He missed the way the stars looked up from up in the mountains.
青崎、
He spoke without looking down from the heavens.
一つ聞きたいんだけど。君に後悔はあるのかな？
Hands jammed in his pockets, his breath was white in the night air. Ako had the vague feeling somewhere deep inside that he was only a figment of her imagination.
どうしたの？突然そんなこと聞いて。
いいから答えて。君に悔いはあるのかないのかを。
It was a sad thing to be asked. He would be hurt one way or another, no matter how she answered. But he wanted an answer, so she gave him one.
ないわよ、そんなの。 だってそれをしないために今を頑張ってるんだもの。後悔なんてのはね、宗十郎。するものじゃなくて、なくしていくためにあるものなのよ。
That's such a good line. Soujyuro did not express any form of disagreement. Instead, he bit his lip and continued to push down the flood of emotions that rose up inside him. He wavered those formless, odorless forms with a small gesture. Sorry, you called them formless forms. Come on. With a small gesture of his hand still at the side.
そうか。後悔もなくなるものなのか。
Pain was subtly visible on his face as he spoke. And yet it was so vivid. As much as he wanted to, he did not have the strength to say it out loud. He was not like her, able to speak her mind so readily. He's talking about the scars on his neck. Maybe someday. The sky and the darkness were both far away now. Tonight's grand view only be seen this once. He hoped its beauty would remain in his mind forever. But what then of the regrets he had come to hold inside? Of the days he spent now that that now shone like stars in the sky? Will they too be with him forever?
いい空ね。街じゃちょっと見れないな。
Aoko mimicked Soujyuro, looking up at the darkness overhead. The stars shone brighter than here in town, or here than in town. This clarity was thanks to the absence of any other lights amidst the darkness. Soujyuro stared at her with almost a sense of loathing. As beautiful as the stars were, they were not the real thing, not
そ
here.
うだね。でも、ここでも手は届きそうにない。
Soujyuro's sudden negativity caused her to turn to him in shock. The anger in his eyes had died down now. Taking a breath, he began to speak as if talking to himself. His gaze never left the stars.
山ではね、青崎。星は本当に手が届きそうなんだ。届かないのは分かっていても、望めば掴めそうなぐらい近いのに、都会の星はそう思うことさえ許してくれない。
He was speaking of the sky in its purest state. The starry skies of the mountains far exceeded those of any urban planetarium. Their movement was like the pouring of rain. He spoke of the primal sky, unchanged from the past, the same sky humans had traced with their fingers since prehistoric times. For him, it was a past to which he could never return, a place to which he did not even know the way back.
今まで目に映るすべてを山と比べていた。こんな場所は本当は嫌いだったんだ。でも、いつか比べるのは街になってしまうんだろう。自分はこっちに降りてきてしまったんだから。
That was his one regret. He lowered his gaze from the stars and turned to Aoko. Her eyes were unusually hesitant and looked slightly hurt. Was it empathy they showed or pity? Either way, he was the reason for the uncharacteristic look on her face now. He shut his eyes and nodded in response to her unspoken question.
それは仕方のないことだ。ただ、そうなるのなら、そうなってしまう以上に、素晴らしいものを手に入れないといけない。後悔を、いつか、後悔と思わないために。
There was gratitude in Sojuro's voice as he confessed his feelings. Remnants from the past must one day be released. Loss must be overcome. He had lost it, his everything, the moment she answered his query.
やめてよね。私の一言でいちいち人生観変えられちゃ荷が重いじゃない。
She smiled weakly and averted her eyes as she spoke those hurtful words. Most likely she was being completely honest, and in that she was being true to herself.
それで、祖父と何を話したの？あの人が他人に興味を持つなんてすごいことよ。
The topic had finally been broached, yet Soujyuro said nothing. An empty reply can be used to buy time. They had nearly reached the flat road at the base of the mountain. The soft earth here would soon give way to tightly packed dirt paths running between the rice fields. But before they got that far, Soujyuro came to an abrupt halt. Closing his eyes, he listened carefully. He then gave a firm nod and turned to face Aoko.
おめでとう、青崎。
She blinked, not knowing what to make of it. It's the new year.
何よ、突然。
It was a perfectly natural response. The tension melted from his face as he said,
新しい年だ。
Oh. Oh my god. He now wore a smile, full of joy, and hey, shout out to the musical sting being so perfect. Dumbfounded, all Aoko could do was stare back at his calm visage. His surprise attack hit her so hard, she thought she could hear the shrine bell in Yashirogi ringing in the new year. She had known it was the last day of the year, but had not given it much thought beyond that. And so, his succinct words gave her quite the shock, as if the girl who believed in the power of the bell all those years ago had come back.
そっか。午前0時でもう新しい年なんだ。
She spoke in a hushed tone as if it were shocking news. At the same time, a slight smile crept onto her face. A new year indeed. She recalled the first time she had worn a full-length kimono, how she had not been particularly uncomfortable or embarrassed, but not especially pretty either. The only pretty thing about her had been the moment she smiled at herself in the mirror. Seeing the warmth in her eyes, Soujyuro closed his own in satisfaction. It made him happy to see her like that.
いろいろあったけど、新しい年を君と迎えられてよかった。
Aww. Oh, that face, that's so pure. With that, he went walking off once more. The thought of Alice waiting alone was probably what spurred him into action. Aoko recalled his words as she walked alongside him. The moment he had declared the start of a new year, the way he had spoken so naturally, it made her suddenly feel like they had known each other for years. She could not be blamed for being filled with happiness at the thought. Mind you, that could be a bit of the residual 10 years there sticking around in her mind a bit, because that'd be 10 more years with him, right? And yet a day would surely come when they would have to say their goodbyes. Until then, however, it would not do any harm to behave as if they were old friends. He was a naive yet incredibly unique young man. As they walked, she wondered how long this fleeting feeling of friendship would last. She looked up wistfully at the sky, just the way Soujyuro had done earlier on their walk. Every star was out, without a cloud in the sky. The two strode down the mountain path beneath stars that lay ever beyond their reach. Hey, this song might not be able to be played. It's vocal. They hate vocal songs. You'll know if you hear singing. That was incredible. That was so good. That was really good. It is a smaller story. It's funny because it's like character design. Great job, guys. That might actually be part of the Japanese version, though, because they sometimes put these in. Yo, this song's going hard. It'd sure be a shame if you can't see it. P-Fals did the Kickshaw designs. Interesting. That's, who did P-Fals do? Darius Mozart? Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, wow. Yeah. That makes tons of sense. God, yeah. Wow, no, this is such a good game. As I said, it is a smaller story, despite the fact that it actually goes frickin' insane in its ending. Hey, Gymnopede, you're the one that always gives me trouble. No, this game is so good. So good, right? May Riddell Archelot? Who is May Riddell Archelot? What's that character? Wait, is there still a character that we haven't met because of the fact that, I wonder. Because I think there's bonus scenes after. But, such a good game. Like, from start to end. One of the best. I think, in the grand scheme, I think I like Stay Night more. I think if I were to do the trilogy here, Stay Night's still the top. Under that comes Mahoyo. Under that is Tsukihime. If we're just counting the original base works, right? I think, oh, but like, oh my god, in terms of presentation, this is the greatest visual novel for presentation. I cannot imagine a better visual novel. And from what I hear, that this is Supercell. Frick, that's good. That's good. Yeah, really good. I'm excited for the movie for this. Absolutely, so much. I wonder how they're gonna cut it down, because 2 hours doesn't feel like a lot. They'd really have to. I almost would say it should be split in two, right? And they might end up, but then again, what we like, the preview images have all been the final shots of, where it is. Oh, like, honestly, 10 out of 10 game. I happily own 4 copies of it. Like, no joke. I own 4 copies. I would love for there to be more. I would love for the apparent Witch on the Holy Night 2 and 3 to come out. And I think there is a chance. I know people have said, oh, there's no chance. Nah, we're in a world where they'll just announce stuff and it'll come out, right? I mean, it'll come out eventually. Like, it will. I think in my lifetime, we'll see it. Absolutely. Very few things I feel are truly lost, especially with something as big as the Nasuverse. Will we see it for a while? I don't think so. I think we're more likely to see other things first, but what is that noise? Oh, there's more. Guess I gotta pick my controller up again. It was on a lazy Sunday morning that I discovered the book. Was I an intruder? No, adventurer. Either way, I'd made my way into the forbidden Kuwanji Estate library. The book instantly drew my attention as it looked like it had been intentionally hidden there on the bookshelf. It was large enough to double as a shield and took great effort for me to remove it from the shelf. Flipping through, I realized it was a grimoire of rune magecraft and a first edition at that. Surprised as I was by my find, my search came to a halt on the page I'd been looking for. It was the rune for memory erasure that the Nordic gods had once used on a Valkyrie. For minutes, I simply stared at the page where the rune methodology was laid out, and then finally I shut the book. Alice hid it. I returned it to the shelf in an even harder to detect location than I'd originally found it. That's when it hit me. I'd seen this book before somewhere. When and where exactly had I seen it, though? It was when he first invited me to spend time with him. The girl sitting before me had it in hand at the time. That must have been it. Unable to keep the smile off my face, I decided to put the book back exactly where I'd found it. It would be most difficult to find when mixed in with other books on the shelf. However, out of respect for her gracious efforts, I decided to pretend I'd never seen it at all. I shelved my discoveries, so to speak. That's when I heard the shouting of a familiar voice in the main building. Lately, he seemed to have found his calling as a housekeeper and had taken to cleaning every corner of the mansion. That was all well and good. There were a few things that were off limits, which neither Alice nor I dared to touch. He was the type to open things without asking, which put us all in hot water. There had been an uproar when he released the ghost ship that Alice's mother had kept around. The what? We didn't talk about that? Catching that little speed demon known as the Cutty Sark. Like Cutty Flam? Had been quite the ordeal. I still felt bad for having to rely on that creepy golden wolf for— oh, he's around! And before that, he'd lifted the seal on a troop of spirits in the basement, which led to the even creepier people from the church coming to the mansion for an entire week. Going back even further, there was also the time he ventured out unsolicited into Alice's room. In the ensuing chaos, I fell into the mirror, which almost ended up in an all-out war with Alice. Come to think of it, he really and truly lacked any capacity for learning.
もういい加減にしてよね、あのバカ!
It's a beautiful library. Holy crap. The big tree is awesome. The good mood I'd been in up until that moment was spoiled, and I went dashing out of the library. I imagined coming upon the architect of my troubles standing there in the hallway and giving him the swift dropkick to the face he deserved. As far as I was concerned, that would be just another fun day in the mansion. And so, A little secret remained hidden on the bookshelf, likely never to be opened again. All this time, they could have erased his memory. It was right there. But Alice... Oh, Happy New Year! No! You can't do that to me. You can't do that. Ooh. Oh, we got more ploy stuff. And we have extra. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's more. We're not done. All right, guys. We'll be back next time, and we'll see for sure. If we go to... How much are we missing? Oh, yeah, we're missing stuff. So we still got stuff to look at. The other question I have is, if I go to sound mode, we're missing songs still. Again, because the game is linear, we are missing stuff. If I were to go to continue... Okay, so it places me here, okay. But what I want to do is if I go to settings... Yeah, okay, so this is probably that one character that we heard the name of that we don't know who they are. So I'm curious about that. I'm curious, because I was wondering, I was like, that can't be Gramps. Right? That can't be Gramps. So, all right. Next time, guys, we'll be back for the extra part. And, yeah. This game is so good. Please don't just take, please, and I beg you, please don't just, if you just watch this video, don't just watch it. Please also support them. Please buy this game. Buy it and lend it to a friend even. Please, I beg of you, I need more. I've bought 4 copies, but that's not enough compared to the amount of views this gets. Please, it means so much to me. Support Type Moon, support this. It is so good. Please watch the movie when it comes out. And yeah, thank you all for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time for the bonus part of Witch on the Holy Night. Ciao, guys.